Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me again for another episode of Novel Ideas. Today, our book is Hester by Margaret Oliphant, and my interlocutor today is Anna Wenger, a dear friend of mine. I've known Anna for 30 years-ish. I met her at UCLA when we were part of the Shakespeare Reading and Performance Group, and we had a lot of fun and did things probably not entirely faithful to the will of Shakespeare, but again, we had a lot of fun. Anna has had an impressive career in television and film, being the head of production for Funny or Die back in its nascent days, and show running several shows, including Billy on the Street. And she also works with Adam McKay right now, producing content for his Yellow Dot Studios, which creates comedic content around environmental issues. I hope you enjoy this discussion. I know we had a lot of fun doing it. I do want to note, like all Novel Ideas episodes, they are full of spoilers. We talk about the book, we talk about the ending. If you are somebody who doesn't like things spoiled for them, you may want to listen to this after you've read it. However, as I mentioned in other episodes, I always find it more enjoyable sometimes reading a book if I do know everything that's going to happen. It really allows me to sink into the book more, in my opinion. But choose as you will. And without further ado, our conversation on Hester. Don't worry about it. I'm doing audio mainly.
That's great. If you're not doing video, I'm going to move. My lighting in my house fucking sucks. And I'm like trying.
I was about to say the lighting looked pretty good.
Well, I got a ring light. But cool. Yay. Then I can get comfortable and roam around the house and shit.
I mean, the podcast is kind of secondary, right? The real reason I'm doing this is because I want an excuse to talk books with people, because if you do it casually, no one wants to do it.
It totally worked for me because I'm like, well, I have to read the book because
right.
I'm going to have to talk about it. And literally, you gave me this book probably like a year and a half ago, but I haven't read anything that is challenging or to read in years.
First of all, she was published by Dickens in his magazine. I totally forgot what it's called, but it was his magazine. She knew Anthony Trollope and George Eliot and Elizabeth Gaskell, who are three authors I read quite a lot. But she also published like more than 80 novels and other shit, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, it just seems so prolific. I was like wondering why she wrote so much. And the reason was because she was broke.
Well, her husband died, right? Like
her husband. So yeah, in Italy.
Died. She had to support kids, so she
all ended up dying. That's the thing. She lost her 3 daughters kind of in youth, and then she lost her 3 sons over the course of her lifetime. So she at least had a life with her sons, but all of them died before she did. Also, she invited other family. Her brother was ruined in Canada, so she invited his family over. A cousin needed a job, so she brought. So basically, she kind of is Catherine.
She completely is, and it's clear from the jump what this story is about.
Hester and Catherine are 2 sides of Margaret Oliphant, right? And it could very well be Margaret Oliphant in her youth and Margaret Oliphant in her dotage, right?
You referred to Catherine's age as dotage, which I would never refer to that woman as.
That's true. That's true. Actually, you're right. I guess dotage is not a fair word because she's vibrant all the way to the end.
And she's kicking ass the whole way through.
She's kicking ass all the way. In fact, actually, she dies having kicked the most ass.
I know.
Ever, right?
Having kicked as much ass as she could possibly kick.
Obviously, the female equality theme is just so prominent. And of course, I feel underqualified to really talk about how it reads in this book. Mm-hmm. So why don't you tell me how this reads as a proto-feminist book?
I think it is telling how accurately all the shit that happens in this book could be equated with everything happening today, like blow for blow. These sentiments that I have, like all day long,
right.
were so clearly written about, described, and known about in 1883. This book would have been 10,000 times more beneficial for me to read at the age of 16 than
Yeah.
The Great Fucking Gatsby. But I just think these tales are universal. I mean, don't you think so? I mean, weren't you reading this and just being like, why are we still fucking talking about this shit
Yeah.
today? Like,
Yeah, no, exactly.
then, like, it's bananas. And also the power of the aristocracy having such a hold on the rules of how everybody needs to be treated
Yeah.
is just beyond, and it still exists today. You know,
Yeah.
It's just
The social mores are just different now. And that's
they're not different though, dude. I think it's all the same stuff. Like, I think you could take this and compare it to like a number of modern stories, you know, real life stories.
See, I agree that they get fundamentally the same, but again, they're just kind of dolled up in a different way. I think there are many people that can read Hester and not see that. And also, Margaret Oliphant is also writing about 30 years before. From the perspective of 1883, where there is advancement, the suffragette movement was gaining steam in 1883, but it wasn't necessarily in the 1850s. And that's when she's setting this piece.
I was confused as to, and I didn't have time to look it up, why Catherine had a fortune at her disposal at the age of 35 after her grandfather had died.
Yeah, you're right. She didn't go into detail about why Catherine had this fortune or could control it because, and again, with the language every other male character uses, even the female characters.
Yeah.
There's constantly a language about women are not part of this, right? Even after Catherine saves the bank the first time, in the first couple chapters, she does step away and leaves it to men. Right?
Yeah.
Who then proceed to drive it back into the ground. I mean, it's like, it's She also notes several times, she goes, back then, so the omniscient narrator is obviously writing for the perspective of 1883.
Right, yeah. In those days.
Margaret Oliphant, though, was writing back then too, right? I mean, her career got in the 1830s or 40s, right? She just wrote for a long time. So she was watching society change, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I think in 1883, she felt she needed to set it 30 years before to reflect upon the moment they were at in 83, which I think is interesting. But of course, as you were saying, it reflects on now.
And I wanted to mention something you said at the jump, that it was so clear that women didn't do business. Even after she saves it, she goes and steps away. There's a quote from Mrs. John toward the end where she's like, why would Edward come to you to talk about business? Nobody talks to women about business. Well, except Catherine, but she's like a man.
She's like a man, exactly.
She's like a man. And it's just like, what the fuck? It's bananas.
Yeah. That's something that appears a lot in Victorian books, I've noticed.
Yeah.
That when a woman shows any kind of acumen for anything, she is then described as a man.
I know. And it happens today.
It happens today, exactly.
It happens to me when I am at the top of a hierarchy, me thinking, everybody knows I'm cool, but the people, who are my employees being afraid to speak to me about things. Like I'm like, what do you think I'm gonna do? And it's just like, because I'm loud and I think, speak clearly, people assume, I don't know. They think I'm just I don't know what but it'll come to pass that I'm like, why don't you just tell me you need 3 days off? Or something.
Totally.
Act like they're afraid, and they're afraid for no reason other than you're a woman in charge.
Saying you speak clearly, straightforwardly, that's another thing that doesn't happen in female society. You don't say exactly what you mean or ask for exactly what you want, and Hester does.
And so does Catherine.
And so does Catherine,
And nobody believes Catherine, and they're speaking clearly, and everybody's like, she's got some other ulterior motive.
Let me throw this out there too. The other theme that I thought was interesting is the idea of family. There is no nuclear family being depicted here. You're always seeing the people who never had that. Everybody, the Vernonry, everybody had that. The closest you get,
The Mary Dews.
they're gonna be, right? But their baby isn't even, the baby is just born.
They have a month-old baby, but yeah.
They have a month-old baby, yeah. But
Well,
Mr. Rule talks about his wife and his children because he goes back and tells the story of the bank to them, but you never meet them. So you have a glimpse into somebody who has that nuclear family and some things like that. But everybody else in the book is kind of a fragmented family, nuclear family.
Yeah.
But somehow it operates like a family, like a very dysfunctional family, but it operates as a family.
I absolutely loved all of the tenants of the Vernonry.
They are great.
They were freaking fabulous. Mr. Mildmay Vernon never disappoints.
The Ridgeways, the two Ridgeway sisters.
Oh, God, yes. The Vernon Ridgeways, the Miss Vernon Ridgeways. I love how she's able to create just so many caricatures. I mean, there are types of characters, like the two judgmental society lady, old biddies.
Who are not part of society at all. They never go out. In their minds, they are part of that same system and they feel entitled.
Yeah, but I mean, they'd be able to go to a society thing if they wanted to.
They're only invited to Catherine's stuff, though. Right? They never get invited to anything else. There's not a lot going on. And that's another thing that I think is interesting. And again, when we get to Ellen, I'd love to talk about her because she is one of my favorite characters.
Every character in this thing,
they're all good.
Every single one of them is so developed.
Including Mr. Rule. I love him.
I know. I said every character. I mean, even the maid, Catherine's maid has a personality. And I swear to God, I think she's only referred to as the Catherine's maid the whole time.
Yeah, and she's always listening, and she always.
And you know who she is. Yes, like you have a very clear idea of her personality.
And what I think Margaret Oliphant does really well in this book is go into everybody's internal monologue and show how they are so wrong about everybody else they're judging. Hester is wrong about what she thinks about Catherine. Catherine is wrong about what she thinks about Hester. Catherine is wrong about what she thinks about Mrs. John. Mrs. John is kind of wrong about everything because she just doesn't get anything, right? Edward is wrong about why Hester is attracted to him. Roland is wrong about Hester should be attracted to him.
The female characters, such a variety representing without it being like too many. Like all of the characters seem necessary. It was able to like represent every kind of facet of these personalities.
Everybody has a very idiosyncratic worldview. Emma, Catherine, Hester, and believes that everybody else has that same worldview, and discovering that people don't. Like Catherine, when she thinks Edward has her worldview and is utterly disappointed by the fact that he doesn't. Mrs. John has a particular worldview. People should be getting married to be in that house and everything. And when things don't happen that way, it kind of crushes them. Edward, too, it's like his worldview is, I'm going to speculate and I'm going to be rich. And when it doesn't happen, he's kind of crushed, right? She does that very well. Author people's worldviews. You understand how they see the world.
Harry and Ellen, I cannot remember their introduction clearly enough. I want to ask if you know why Harry and Ellen were kind of like openly like, fuck Catherine. Like why?
Harry wasn't. It was only
I know Harry
Ellen.
wasn't, but what was the thing that Ellen, why were they that way? Did they have their own money or something?
No. It's just that, like everybody else, and again, Catherine mentions this, everything that she does to like give things to people are ungrateful for, including Ellen.
But for some reason at the top, I thought that Ellen didn't do what Catherine wanted her to do somehow, like from the top.
Yeah, she did it, but again, I think it's because Ellen just has a little bit of her
I know, but the point is that Ellen is a rebel and everybody knows Ellen is a rebel. And even though Catherine has disdain for Ellen, Catherine is still footing all of Ellen and Harry's bills because that's what's proper and right. So then you go, okay, but Edward doesn't look at Ellen doing what she wants and Catherine not approving of it, but still getting paid for it. But Edward can't see that Catherine is treating everybody fucking equally. Like Catherine isn't this overlord that he's imagined her to be. So I think when you're saying worldview, it's like the thing that whatever they've created that they
they're all responding to the same set of rules. But I feel like their position in it is the thing that I'm talking about.
Yes, it's their positions in society that she's so fantastic with representing each of them.
These kind of characters that you would sort of hate, you find yourself still loving a part of them, right? This transitions nicely into the first person I want to talk about, Mrs. John first. I want to talk about Mrs. John. The bank fails 30 years before the events of that we're reading with Hester. But Hester's only 14, so that means John Vernon flees without his wife. His wife somehow goes to join him after that. They live together for 16 years and then have Hester. They had a relationship. And of course, he died soon after that, I gather that Hester didn't really know her father, right? But I thought that was odd. Like, I would have understood better if Mrs. John was pregnant, John Vernon fled, Mrs. John, ashamed, pregnant, left as well and lived in France by herself. And then they came back 14 years later. But that's not what happens. And that changes Mrs. John for me a little bit because she goes and has a relationship, continues to have a relationship with her husband for 16 years.
I thought he died right away. And
no, because how else could she have had Hester?
I didn't think about the timeline.
I didn't think about the timeline the first time I read it.
Mrs. John is in her mid-40s.
She's in her late 50s or early 50s, I think. She probably had Hester when she was like 30, because I did the math, right? I go, okay, if they left and Hester's 14 and it's been 30 years.
Yeah.
She has to have been like 36 when Hester was born.
Yeah.
Right? So she was older, but like I said, she had a relationship with John Vernon. So I don't know whether that was a convenience of Margaret Oliphant. Remember, Margaret Oliphant wrote a lot and fast. So it could be something she wasn't even thinking about.
You know, I wanted there to be some story, some tell-all where Catherine and John, like John wanted to speculate and Catherine was like, no, like they had something. Actually, there was some further reason that Catherine had this disdain for Mrs. John and Hester, which I found unreasonable.
And I like that it was kind of unreasonable because people are unreasonable when they're judged.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And I liked that Mrs. John and Hester were just living abroad. I mean, Hester was raised in France, so she speaks French fluently, which she never does, obviously, in the book. But, you know, she comes back, and that's why she feels so like, yeah, I can teach. Are you kidding? I have an education that nobody in Britain has. I'm practically French, right?
Yeah.
But I feel, so Mrs. John comes back. Why? That's my first question is, why does Mrs. John come back? Why does she accept this? Maybe they were in dire straits in France and she comes back out of necessity. But I don't think so. It felt like they had a life going on. So let's assume they had a life going on and she made the choice to come back.
So just to get the timeline right, John Vernon, Hester's father, died when Hester was 12?
No, he died when Hester probably was soon after Hester was born, I'm assuming.
I mean, I always assumed that was why. It's because she was able to support herself for 12 years without him, but then she ran out of money.
Or 14 years, yeah. So Hester's 14.
And I didn't realize, it wasn't until Edward fled with enough money to support him and Emma that I realized that, John must have done the same thing, which is why they had to leave in the first place, because they took a bunch of money with him.
Like he left without Mrs. John, but Mrs. John went to go join him and obviously was still married to her and they were still husband and wife, as fugitives.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So he dies and you're right. Maybe she ran out of money. So either she was desperate and needed to accept it, or she chose to come back because there was something. She felt she belonged there, right? She grew up there.
Well, there's also that Hester's coming of age. And if she's going to get married, she needs to be around English society. I assume they weren't living with French society,
Right.
and here it's like she has some provenance. So I just assumed all of that, how sometimes your head just fills in the story and you don't wonder about it. But
I think the reason why I was thinking about it now is because I'd read it before and because I wasn't thinking about it the first time I read it. And so as I came across certain things, I knew what was going to happen. And so I'm like, oh, wait a second. Like, what is the timeline here? Let me read this quote then. So the first coming into town, Mrs. John stood still, resisting the action of the helm unconsciously, and all at once began to cry. That is where we used to live, she said, with little sobs breaking in. That is where we lived when we married. It was built for me. And now to think, I have nothing to do with it. Nothing. It was then that the question arose, large, embracing the entire past, and so many things that were beyond the mother's knowledge. Why did Papa go away? Hester asks. Mrs. John cried. She could not help it. Feeling in a moment all the difference, the wonderful change, the downfall and reversal of everything that in those days she had expected and hoped, she dried her eyes half a dozen times and burst out again. Oh, what have I done that so much should happen to me? And Catherine Vernon always the same, she said.
I love it. And
She doesn't answer Hester's question, first of all.
From all these first meetings with Mrs. John, I was just like, oh my God, I don't know. Like that carriage ride specifically that you just read, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle much of this woman. But then as she went on, you just end up loving her. And even as I was reading, look at all the notes I put in this.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I mean, I was just obsessed. You have no idea. But I wrote, on page 436, I'm like, Mrs. John's dedication, her commitment to ignorance is so strong.
There's another thing about Mrs. John that I think is interesting, and that is Mr. Rule's story about her. We see him going to look for John Vernon, and Mrs. John is there and doesn't know what's going on. And he says, I need money. And she goes, you need money? And she goes to get the 20 pounds. We read that scene and we're like, I mean, she's not doing it because of this huge gesture of like, please take my 20 pounds.
Yeah.
But Mr. Rule turns that story into something that reflects very well upon Mrs. John.
Yeah. And then later it is proven that Mrs. John is just this innocent soul. Her commitment to ignorance and her commitment to the role that has been assigned to her by society is what keeps it alive. And that's why I hesitate to call it the patriarchy. There's these fucking women who are just like, I don't know anything. I would never be burdened, but I just don't want to think about anything. And it's like, it's all of our duty to think about this stuff. None of us want to think about it. You think Catherine wants to be up for 5 days fixing all this shit, Nobody does, dude. Take on your share of the burden.
And again, I remind you, that killed Catherine.
Dude, I cried at the end.
The other thing about Mrs. John, though, that we sincerely believe is that she loves Hester, and Hester in turn loves her. And yes, there is a motherly duty to the daughter and a daughterly duty to the mother, but both of them go beyond that. They go beyond just duty.
100%. I think that they both see clearly who the other person is. And
Totally.
I think Hester, more than her mother, accepts who the other person is and knows that they're good in their soul. And I think ultimately Mrs. John accepts who Hester is too, because she doesn't lobby that hard. I mean, you see other women getting hysterical, specifically, in the beginning of the book when John Vernon, the OG, Hester's father's mother, is hysterical trying to get Catherine and Edward to marry. And Mrs. John could do that. And even though her beliefs, like the most she says is just like, it would be so wise for you to marry a strong man like Harry, but oh well, you know what I mean? Or you should never work. My God, I would never think of you working. And then her other thing, which is one of my favorites, which my mother said to me all the time, who has a very old timey way of speaking. You're a strange girl. You're such a strange girl. A stranger girl I have never met. I think, just like the things you come up with out of that head and filled with admiration for her daughter. She
Yeah,
knows.
yeah, totally. And I think that as even the Ridgeways, even if they insinuate certain things about Hester, Mrs. John asserts that Hester is kind of better than them.
And the other thing Mrs. John does is defend Catherine.
Mrs. John does defend Catherine too. Yeah, again, she's just a good soul.
The honest people see, well, Catherine doesn't see them honestly, but I think that they know. Well, I take that back. I mean, Catherine shows them respect from a distance by, supporting them.
If they had more gratitude, would Catherine be closer to them? Probably. Going back to Hester, is her dislike for Catherine warranted? She is very defensive of her mother's honor and esteem. She is described as delightful. Well, I'll just read the quote out of context. I'm sure the context will be obvious. Hester was a great deal too young for a heroine, but as it chances, there could not be a better portrait of her than that of Lamb's sprightly neighbor. She went out with that springing motion, stepping on air, with the pride of life and youth and conscious energy in every vein, a certain youthful contempt for the inferior beings who lay stupid behind those closed shutters. Losing all this bloom and glory was in her heart. She was very black in the midst of the bright landscape in her morning frock with a white handkerchief tied around her throat like a French girl. But her curly locks shining like everything else in the sun. She did not mind the sun. She had not yet learned that she had a complexion to care for. Besides, the sun could do nothing to the creamy white of her tint. Perhaps she was not very sensitive, not thin-skinned at all, either in body or soul. That is kind of her introduction. It's very close to the beginning of the book. And again, it's like, yes, she has this confrontational relationship with Catherine. Yes, she has this kind of rebellion sort of thing. But when she's not fighting something, she's just this breath of energy and fresh air that just leaps through everything. And I thought that was an amazing description of her, I felt.
Catherine's first impression of her, she sees that. And here's the thing, is that you described Hester as rebellious. I do not describe her as rebellious because she just wants to do what she wants to do.
Right. She's not trying to change society. You're right.
She's just like, dude, let me be what I want to be. And Hester was right. Catherine shouldn't have shown up at 11 o'clock at night or even 7 or 8 unannounced while her mother is in bed. It's disrespectful. And Hester was right to stand up for them. And Catherine wanted to demonstrate her dominance and thought that she would be able to, because of her clout, forget the mores of society. And Hester was like, excuse me, who do you think you are? Because Hester doesn't know she should be ashamed.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Hester's right.
I mean, she also doesn't know she should be deferential.
And one other thing about her is that every person loves and is captivated by Hester in this book.
Whether they like it or not.
They're obsessed with her. And it's because she thinks for herself. She's like, I don't do any of this shit. I'm not doing it. Whatever you guys are doing, all the games that you're playing, I'm not playing them in a very polite way. It's like she doesn't even worry about not going to parties or accepting marriage proposals or suggesting that she work. Everybody goes, oh, could you? And she just goes, oh, well, it's just what I want to do. I mean, know. And here's another thing. Men love liberal women. There is a thing on dating apps where conservative men either not listing their political affinity or saying that they're bipartisan or whatever, because they want to date liberal women. And I think that was something that I noticed with Harry's proposal, Roland's proposal, and Edward's proposal, is they're all like, fuck it, just come be my wife. Like, why wouldn't you want to just make my life your life?
Yeah.
And she's just like, because I don't want to. And that's what they want ultimately, right? They want the most wild stallion they can tame, like, and that's what the conservative men want too. Like, where's one of these mouthy bitches? Let's lock her down.
I mean, I think anybody needs to feel stimulated by who they're with. And again, they may not know it then. They might marry a passive person because they're like, oh, this is great. She wants a family. She wants kids. I want a family. I want kids. And then 20 years later, it's like, I'm bored.
Not that having a family and having kids makes you passive, because I'm sure there's plenty of childless marriages too where the woman is passive.
It comes up with Edward and Catherine. They're not married, but they have a intimate relationship.
Yeah.
And he becomes bored by it. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that when we talk about Edward.
When we talk about Edward. Okay, let's get back to that.
And you mentioned their first interaction, Catherine and Hester, and here it is. This is Catherine going to the Vernonry at 11 o'clock at night, right?
Okay.
The daylight, which has come to an end altogether in the dark wainscoted rooms inside, was still lingering without. Behind the trees, there was a golden clearness upon the horizon against which every branch stood out. The stars were only half visible in the faint blue. The walk had been delightful. Right, it's 11 o'clock at night. She's walking. It was the time she preferred to be abroad, her mind undisturbed by those cares which pursue less peaceful people, yielding itself up entirely to the spell of universal tranquility and repose. So this is her mindset going in to the Vernon.
Yeah.
And then, but when Miss Vernon, opening the glass door of the veranda, suddenly came in sight of a figure which was quite unexpected, which she could not identify or recognize, she was, for the moment, too much startled to speak. A tall girl of 14, in that large development which so many girls attain at that early age, to be fined down into slim grace and delicacy afterwards, with rather high shoulders, increased by the simple form of her dress, hair of chestnut color, cut short and clustering in natural rings and twists not curled in the ordinary sense of the word, a complexion in which white predominated, the creamy whiteness of a sanguine temperament, with but little of the rose and two large eager brown eyes full of curiosity, full of life, evidently interrogating everything, coming out, even upon the twilight and the tears of departing day, with her lighted candle and all questioning eyes.
Yeah.
So the previous description of Hester that I read, a lot of those same attributes are here, but in the context of something that frightens her.
Yeah.
And I just love it, right? And also the way that Margaret Oliphant writes her frame of mind, and she just sets up this tranquility only to be cut by the presence of Hester.
Catherine is faced with somebody who, like her, sees through whatever is before them. Now, Catherine was tricked by Edward, but Hester was not.
Right.
Which I do think, because I just think of the two of them as being the same person, basically. Like this
Catherine and Hester, yes.
They're the same, like you said, at two different ages, and it's also the questioning the bright eyes. It's just like when you're faced with somebody who is looking at you and sees everything. I mean, like, Catherine has just been looked at by people who are deferential to her. They know who she is. They know, and they're immediately like, oh my gosh, why are you here? I'm dying to know what you want. And Hester just looked at her like, excuse me.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? It's 11 o'clock.
Yeah, like, who are you? No, you can't see my mother.
Yeah, let me read the next part of it. Oh my God, all questioning eyes I left off of. This is great. There was so much warmth of life and movement about Hester that it was difficult not to feel a certain interest in her. And there was something wonderfully characteristic in her attitude, arrested as she stepped out like an explorer with her candle in her hand. And this is what Catherine says. I don't know you.
Yeah.
And Catherine Vernon, who from her general popularity and the worship administered to her all around, had perhaps, without knowing it, acquired the familiar ease of expression which belonged to kind and well-intentioned despots. The tone of her voice, Hester thought, who was accustomed to that distinction, was as if she said tu, as in the French tu, the informal tu.
Yeah.
And it depends a great deal upon circumstances, whether it is affection or insult to tut over a stranger. I don't know you, she said, coming in without any invitation and closing the glass door behind her. I suppose you must have come with Mrs. John Vernon. It is not possible, she cried after a moment, that you are the little girl? Now, what was amazing is we started with Catherine scrutinizing Hester, and then in the very next paragraph, it flips to Hester scrutinizing Catherine, and we as readers didn't even realize the change happened.
I thought Lewis is not going to know any of my references but they're Lorelai and Emily Gilmore. Have you ever watched the Gilmore Girls?
I watched a few episodes of the Gilmore Girls, but I've actually heard people talk about the Gilmore Girls.
I know. And I feel like you would hate the Gilmore Girls, but I mean, you wouldn't hate it, but it just wouldn't keep you interested enough. Actually, give it a try. The Gilmore Girls are both hot. So anyway.
The mother's definitely hot.
I know. She's so beautiful. That's the whole thing of the Gilmore Girls is Emily, the mother, and Lorelai, the daughter, are absolutely cut from the same cloth. They're exactly the same person, and they just bicker. So they remind me of Emily and Homegirl.
So let's dive into Catherine here, right?
Yeah.
Her judgment of Hester is unfair, and her judgment a lot of people, I think, are unfair. She dismisses Harry and loves Edward, though Harry is probably more faithful than anybody else, and Edward ends up betraying her. I'm wondering if a lot of her actions are driven by a certain family pride, because Hester also has that same family pride. Her entire family is just her mother.
Yeah.
And she has utter pride about her mother and herself and her father to a certain extent. That's why it's very devastating when she learns that, yes, indeed, he was the cause of the bank the first time. But Catherine also has a pride in her family that almost governs those actions despite the fact that everybody's ungrateful for it.
And I get that pride. It's a duty, right? And it's
you feel it a lot. You love your family. You have pride for your family, but you get frustrated with your family. And you feel like they're not as grateful sometimes as they should be for things you do.
I have absolutely never said that. I don't know where you got that idea. I am super grateful for everything ever done for me and hope to inherit accordingly, Lewis.
Okay. There we go.
The mores of society still exist, Lewis.
Okay, good. Well, then we'll definitely cut all this out.
That's what I led with.
I would not want to jeopardize.
These rules all still exist. I think that this is the conundrum of the matriarch or patriarch of any family, right? Do these people really love me, or are they just kissing my ass to get money? My mother has never given me money, ever. And I do think, she's just like, why don't I give you money? I mean, that's perhaps part of it. I'm not going to give you guys money. I want to know that you're here because you want to be here. And we're always there, because we're noble creatures, and I think that's the thing. I was really shocked to learn that Edward was so full of shit and that Catherine's judgment was that bad.
With the first time we ever really meet Edward, he's a botanist, right? He's out there in the early morning hours looking at plants, and we're like, oh, wonderful little science guy.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that'd be great for Hester.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he proceeds to be,
I know. He had such a strong start, and that's on purpose. Catherine's currency. So this is another problem with the aristocracy. They use money as a tool to control love, right?
Yes.
They love the kid who goes and becomes a lawyer or a doctor, who makes the money, who marries well, who then, I say lawyer and doctor, that's today's standards. But in the past, it was just, you got to marry the right person. They got to have good business dealings. It's all business, And so money is love to them. Right. So they don't say, I love you or whatever. Catherine loves all those idiots in the
She does. Well, because she has a very nurturing presence.
And she doesn't talk smack about them. She She's trying to be
Think
honorable.
smack about them. You're right. She doesn't actually talk smack.
No, no, and all she does is see through their BS because they all kiss her ass, but she can tell
You could tell, yeah.
that they are what they think because she can read everybody. And she could read Hester. She could tell what Hester was thinking, and she didn't like it when she first met her, but she could not see Edward because she didn't have any other love her whole life.
Yeah, she depended on Edward
She
for her
needed
entire
somebody
emotional.
to actually love her,
Yeah.
and so she clung to it and she thought that she did and that he loved her like a child and was loyal to her the way that Hester was loyal to Mrs. John, even though they had opposite worldviews. And meanwhile, Edward didn't trust or respect Catherine enough to even say to her, hey, I want my own place. It's ready for me to go, and I want to marry who I want. Catherine has a huge lament at the end, which is just like, I would have done whatever he
Right,
wanted me to
exactly.
do. Why did he think I wouldn't?
Edward created his own prison.
Yes.
There is even a quote kind of at the end, and I didn't mark this one, and I should have. But after Edward leaves and it's Catherine and Hester together, Catherine said something to the effect of not being able to figure out whether we love each other or hate each other and all this time. And Hester says something like, well, I think I've done both.
I've done both the whole time.
Right. And it's like, and you're thinking, oh my God, Hester loved Catherine the whole time too.
And Catherine loved Hester the whole time too. And Catherine loves every single one of those people. And all she knows, because nobody is telling the truth except Hester and Harry.
Yes.
Harry
always
is the most noble of gentlemen of anybody. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to totally derail us. But
No. We'll talk about Harry in a second.
Yeah.
But let's get to this quote. This is the description of the scene. The first moment she has a doubt about Edward. Here it is.
This is Catherine.
This is Catherine and Edward looking out the window at the Vernonry. I think he's just come home. They're talking about Hester. Only one person so far, and this is Catherine speaking at first. Only one person so far as I can make out. It must be that girl of Mrs. John's. Right? They're trying to figure out who Harry. Yeah. I suppose she is what you call pretty, though she has never been a favorite of mine. And then Edward goes, but you can't confine prettiness to your favorites, Aunt Catherine, said Edward, with a sharp smile, which he had sometimes. No, that's true. I deserve that you should hit that blot. She's pretty, I know. Poor Harry, he will have his hands full. What with the mild mother and the wild daughter, I wonder at that girl, though. She is an ambitious, energetic thing, and poor dear Harry will never set the Thames on fire, as you say. Edward says, did I say that? No, I don't think he will, but he has solid qualities. And then she goes, very solid. I'm reading a lot of this, but it's for a very specific reason.
Keep going.
Very solid. The White House and his share in the bank, oh, there will be an equivalent. And to think that little schemer, that soft little woman that looks as if she could not harm a fly, should have managed to secure herself in this cunning way and get her daughter back to the point she started from. Who would have thought it? There is nothing so astute as simplicity. Edward made no reply, and this was a thing Miss Vernon did not like. She required a response. Silence felt like disapproval, and as there was a strong silent protest in her heart against everything that was mean or petty in what she said, she was apt to resent this want of acquiescence all the more. She looked back at him, and he did not expect it, and was startled, she was startled, to see a look she had never seen before, a look that astonished her on his face. It was something like a snarl of contempt and despite. But it disappeared in a moment, and she could not believe her eyes. So until that point, she is utterly convinced that she and Edward are totally simpatico, right?
Yeah.
Until that moment. And it's so small. She just glanced at him for a moment, and he just has this like snarl.
Yeah. I feel like little tiny moments like that happen where it's like, in this society where nobody says anything, They're all watching especially Catherine and Hester really are just like picking up every single thing that's happening with the person they're talking to, it feels like, or that.
Yes. And Edward is funny as a character. I'm sort of not actually that interested in him as a character in and of itself. I'm more interested in the way that he resonates out and create reactions within Catherine and Hester and other people too. When I go back and look at my favorite characters, Edward's not one of them as a character.
Well, Edward just falls off once he
pretty quickly.
Yeah. And being baffled that Catherine was so, enamored with Edward for so long, then he turns so bad. And it's the reason he gives is that he's bored, as you mentioned earlier, that he gets tired with the monotony of this life. But really, it seems to me like he just gets resentful.
Yeah, and angry.
And is too much of a wimp to tell Catherine that he's like, dude, I got to get out of here and go speculate or do something because I'm going crazy. Or I want to marry Hester and I'm afraid to tell you. See, I think that actually he wasn't necessarily bored because in the beginning he's like, you said going out and doing botany, and he does it every morning, and it's like like seemingly.
He also describes the fact that he goes to the bank and does the same shit every day. When we start seeing the chinks in his armor, he does actually say that he goes and does the same thing. So I do think boredom is part of it, but I agree with you. I feel like that if the resentment wasn't there, that boredom wouldn't be as excruciating.
Yeah.
And that's what causes it. It's the resentment that is.
Well, it's about freedom, and I think that's freedom is something that word comes up a ton, I feel like.
Yeah, he says it a lot.
He didn't want to lose the inheritance by marrying Hester, which is ultimately what I think he was afraid of. And so that's why he needed to make a big chunk of money so that he could still keep his life up and lose the inheritance.
Did he mention running away before he started speculating, or did he only start mentioning running away with Hester after the speculation? I can't remember.
I think it was after.
It must have been after. It gave him the confidence to start talking like that.
Yeah. Like all of a sudden there's like one of the parties at the Mary Do's where he's just like, oh my God, I totally want to run away with you. Blah. And
right.
What? Yeah, they're so resentful. But I think this is also a type thing of society where they don't really create real relationships because to be vulnerable is to be susceptible to losing your wealth. So, and they're all in competition with one another.
The thing is, he was threatened by no one.
He was
smarter. He was esteemed more. Everybody were like deferential to him. He had the keys to the kingdom.
They're resentful that they're not the ones who were lucky enough to be there, to have the money in the, and the only reason the bank exists is because of her.
So let's shift from Edward to Harry.
I love Harry.
I love Harry. I really do. I mean, again, he's a dumb jock, but he understands he's a dumb jock. There are several moments in which when Catherine, comes to Ellen's party, he dutifully goes right to Catherine's side.
I know.
Right? Yes, he's rejected by Hester, but then completely still continues to respect Hester and Hester's opinions.
I know. He is such a good man in such sharp contrast to Edward, who's supposedly smarter. And it's from the jump that Harry and Ellen were both not ass kissers of Catherine's.
Yeah, Harry wasn't an ass kisser, but he was committed. He was genuinely committed.
He was genuinely loyal to her. And Ellen talked shit all the time, but Harry never did. And Catherine assumed that they both were full of shit, and Harry never was.
Yeah.
And it really is that his exchanges with Hester, like you said, that prove just who this guy is, And it's wonderful to have him represented in the story and not just have every man is a loser or whatever. Both exactly. Roland and Harry are great representation.
Decent guys and
upstanding guys. The old captain and the wife are both live outside of
Yeah.
society. They're like, no, thank you.
And the end of the book, too. I mean, it's really nice to know that, yes, we don't know if Hester will marry, but the fact that her options are just so bright. It's
Yeah.
either this wonderfully loyal guy
Yeah.
or a kind of a smart. I mean, he's loyal to Roland is
Dude, he's
loyal
hot
as
as
well.
shit too. Roland is hot. Like,
Yeah, he's hot and he's
oh,
charismatic.
but I had to say, Margaret Oliphant. Oh, I love her so much, Lewis. I hope I can find this quote. She says at the very end, upon his last entrance, let's see, they're either leaving the bank or when they're up all night, or it's either they're up all night or they're at the bank for 10 hours. Sorry. 10 hours. She walked to her carriage with a foot lighter and firmer than that of Harry, upon whose fine physique and troubled soul this day had wrought more havoc than the severest football. And I was just, and that's on page 425. I'm like, let's remind everybody that Harry is fine as shit. I know I went on and on about Roland before, but let me just get it in one more time that this guy's hot too. Great option.
Yeah.
He's loyal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's like, by the way, I think it's Catherine. Yeah, it's Catherine who he's helping out of the carriage. And he's just good through and through, and he's so excellent. And he carries her out at the end when, dude, that scene at the end when Ellen comes to Catherine.
Oh, God. Yes.
Yells at her, and the amount of blame that happens throughout the book for women for shit that they did not do. Mrs. John being blamed for, spending too much money and ruining John Vernon's career. Catherine for being this overlord who's ruining Edward's life. When Catherine finds out that Edward is gone, she blames the ruin of the bank potentially on Hester. It's that girl's fault.
They think that somehow she was complicit.
Or that she convinced him because she had these extravagant needs, to do this. And Mrs. John got blamed, for John's ruin.
We're talking about how good
Harry is. He lets people be who they are too.
He's not judgmental to his sister, even though his sister sometimes he knows that his sister's a lot of.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Okay, so that last scene, I think, very smart. She put it in the last 3 pages of the book or something.
Yes, where Ellen comes in and goes, "You've ruined us. Everybody ruined us."
And then when Catherine said, or Harry or somebody says, no, she's gonna bail everybody out again. She's like, "Oh, I love you so much. Thank you so much." And then falling all over her, telling her Catherine how much she loves Catherine. And that's when Catherine sits down in that chair and Hester's like, "Oh shit, I think she's gonna die." Ellen doing that, coming in, raging, and everything's your fault. And you trusted him, and that's your fault. So, what the fuck? She doesn't get credit when things are going well, and she gets blamed when things are shit, even though she had nothing to do with it.
And the way that Catherine reacts to all this stuff, including all that stuff at the bank, for the 5 days they're at that table and everything, she's always this pillar of strength and calm.
Yeah, and she's outrunning the kids, and she's more focused than the kids, and she's in her element. And the scenes where it's just this person's coming in and she's talking to them, but this is how we're going to deal with your thing. And then the other guy comes in, she talks to them, and they all leave going, what an amazing woman. It's crazy to me also. And I think that this is also something that probably happened a lot throughout history. Women would do things like this and everybody would go, well, she's just a unique one. And just it wouldn't go down in history or wouldn't whatever, because they'd be like, well, she's an outlier. But if you ask somebody directly of the time, hey, do you think, some doctor would be like, oh yeah, women can't be doctors. And they'd be like, well, what about her? And they'd be like, oh, well, yeah.
Well, she's an exception. She's a man.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, but she's like a man.
He's like a man. Right? Yeah, exactly. Let's move on to Roland, because again, I don't have an opinion about Roland, actually. In fact, I have more of an opinion about Harry because he actually did seem to kind of move through a kind of arc. Even if that arc was simply in being faced with a crisis and his character in relation to that crisis.
Yeah.
Roland really, I mean, he's charismatic, he's charming, that's great. He introduced this idea of speculation, but then he also tries to hold Edward back. We know that, but I don't feel like there's ever a moment where we're like, oh yeah, we really got to know Roland.
I think he just kind of represents a poorer faction. He's a self-made man and he's responsible with his money. And I actually think that all I needed to know about Roland is when his grandparents were like, do not invest any of these people's money because you will just completely screw up everything if you even make a move. Like, just do not do it if you never do anything for us. And he doesn't even know them, right? This is like the first time they've met them. And that whole thing was very interesting. The story of the captain. I mean, that could be like a whole other book, but it seems as if the captain and the mother abandoned them.
This time around, too, I got a better sense of what was going on, right? What it was that they had these two beloved daughters, right? Mm-hmm. One of which had this family and died. And the grandparents weren't really able to do anything. And they were heartbroken.
Yeah.
That their daughters had died. But they were still in touch with these people. And so when they were able to get back on their feet again, they reached out, right? And Roland did, reached out primarily so he could get close to the Vernons.
No, but it seemed like the grandparents were taking care of the children at one point.
Were they? Yeah, maybe. Maybe they were.
There's a whole other podcast in the things that the captain says. But Roland, all I needed to know is when he's met the captain for the first time, who's being a total dick. I mean, just off the charts, and his grandmother, and they say, don't mess with anybody here's money. Yeah. It will just cause trouble for your family if you never do anything for us. Please do this. And he goes, okay. And then he does it. And he does what he says he's going to do. And he's consistent, and he tries to stop Edward the whole time, and he never really wants to take advantage of those people, even though at the beginning it seems like he's totally going to. Like, he comes in, pretty boy who's charming everybody, and you're like, oh no, this guy's going to be the ruination of everybody.
He did get some investment from the people in Ridgeway.
Right, but he made all sensible investments and wouldn't make anything,
Right. So they did get everybody that invested directly with him. And he even said, Edward, listen, if you want to do this, great, but do it through me. Because those guys are going to eat you alive.
I know. Right? I know. He's a good guy. Like, what I mean? And the worst part about it, his proposal to her was very much like, I would never tell you about business. Why would I tell you about business?
All the men said the same thing.
I think Harry, she just didn't ask Harry because he was supposedly stupid. I see no evidence of Harry being stupid other than everybody keeps saying he is.
Yeah, I feel like he just is not interested in running a bank. I mean, he even says that. Remember Edward when he was kind of doing all of his things and then comes back to the bank and goes, "Hey, Harry, why don't you take off? Go captain your games."
That was the moment that I was like, there's no redemption for Edward.
Yeah. Oh my God, there's no redemption.
For some reason, the way he's just like, go ahead and take off, Harry. I'm just like, fuck you, Edward.
I kind of feel bad for Emma because Emma's not a bad person either. And she's now saddled with this horrible person. I feel we'll get to Emma in a second, but let's look at Ellen real quick. Ellen is a bit much, right? But I feel like Algernon genuinely loves her.
Oh,
absolutely. I know that he wanted to get close to the Vernons, and that's a really big thing for him. But there's even a moment, I don't know if he's lying or saving face, but when she's going out, she's like, listen, I married you because I loved you, not because...
And when she's throwing her huge thing.
And I've met people like this. I've definitely met couples before who the guy is relatively quiet and passive and the woman is just this, but somehow it works in this like really nice and beautiful way. And that's kind of, I feel like when Ellen's not out there, they have a very loving relationship, right? And the thing is, she's kind of a rebel. She's kind of somebody who's like, listen, let's shake this place up.
She's being there you go. She's rebellious. Hester's just like, no.
Hester's just kind of her own thing. Exactly.
Like, I just want to do my own thing. I'm not trying to like rebel. Ellen's trying to be like youthful and no chaperones. Women keep up society. I mentioned earlier Mrs. John keeping up society by loving ignorance and just wanting to do very little. Ellen is the same way, but they have nothing else to do. Everybody in that Vernonry who's in society has nothing to do and is just watching and gossiping. Yeah. And it's the idle members of society that keep up the mores of society and the rules and all this BS. They have the time. Ellen Merridew has the time to throw a huge party every Thursday night.
Yeah.
And the money to do it. That's their full-time job, these women.
For some reason, I am not as judgmental for Ellen, against Ellen as much. But also that when she first meets Hester and she says, oh, we got to do something. And then 5 years goes by and they've never done anything. And then she comes back to Hester and goes, you got to be my partner. And Hester goes, me be your partner? You never came. That meant a lot to me as a kid. Those were my formative years. Like she just, no pretense, no anything. And then Ellen comes right back and goes, yeah, okay, but I wasn't going to hang out with a kid.
It's like, I couldn't pick you up. You were 14. You weren't going to let her go, right? No, your mother wasn't going to let you go. That's why I didn't come get you. Come and hang out with me at this party. No, I really liked Ellen up until that last thing. And that, I think, is why I cried at the end, too. Just feeling the weight of the years of nobody loving you, even though... And you don't, it's not even, I mean, you can just leave it there of nobody loving you. Hester said that she loved Catherine the whole time before Catherine died.
Yeah. And we believe it because she never.
Why would she lie?
In that gossip. She never, also she was very close to the captain and his wife, who they were both very close to Catherine. Catherine spent more time with them, other than Edward. She spent more time with them than anybody else, as did Hester. And that was a connection.
Yeah, and you can't fully disrespect someone who friends of yours that you thoroughly respect also respect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
The fact that the captain and Miss Morgan dedicate themselves to both of these people in front of each other, they're like, you got it all wrong. Every time one of them say anything disparaging about the other, they go, you got it all wrong. And actually, you're both the exact same person.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, how could you say such a thing? And they both disdain what they assume the other to be, but it's the qualities in themselves that they dislike. I mean, Hester struggles with not wanting to engage in the society.
Oh, totally. I mean, Hester wants as much for her as anybody else in the book. It's not like Hester is going to go off and be a loner and be happy with it.
No, Hester wants what every ambitious woman wants, which is her partner to be down with her also being ambitious and for them to create some great life together. I mean, in that case, Hester was just like, Edward, I'll just do what you want me. Like, she wanted to work for Edward the way that she worked for, Catherine. That's what she wanted. And Edward just like, no, I'm not going to tell you anything.
And
it's like, dude. And then they all assume, well, because that's what you want. You're like a man. Therefore, you don't want a husband,
What did she say? She said something like, I will work night and day to help you get out of this, right? She's like, I understand things. I know
get out of this.
And she didn't say it. She didn't say it in a way that was like bragging about herself.
No.
She was just like, listen, you need to know that I have certain skills here. And
I can understand anything. I can help you. I know I don't know it, but I can learn it really fast.
In the beginning of the book, too, it's like they mentioned something that the 14-year-old Hester was sort of managing all of her mother's affairs.
I was secretly hoping that she would find some giant chunk of money after Edward had left, like in her mother's affairs, and that Mrs. John would be like, what do you mean the whatever fund, you know? And Hester would be like,
and then she would save the bank with it.
these papers, you've never shown me this, you know? And Mrs. John would be like, well, I thought that was blah, blah, blah. And then she would bail it.
And again, I think in a fun, like kind of crowd-pleasing book, that would have been great. But I like how Margaret Oliphant didn't allow it to go to something like that. And I also like how
I'm not over it yet. And I still
Hester wanted it to. Remember, Hester even said, I want to be put in a position where I can show my mettle. When it does happen, Hester doesn't have a huge part of it. But she does have a substantial part. There's a beautiful moment where Catherine and Hester, the maid, comes in and they're deciding who to reach out to, send letters to. And she sends a letter to Mrs. John, and then she's going to send another one to Harry. And she says, what do you think, Hester? Should we call Harry over? Catherine is now bringing Hester in and asking her opinion about something.
Yeah.
And it's not as if Hester suddenly delivers this amazing insight. All she says is, well, I mean, Harry is really anxious.
Yeah.
Which was enough. And it's like, okay, great.
That's a yes.
We'll have him come over.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I noticed that line too. I thought that was interesting that she said he's really anxious. She didn't have to provide any evidence. She just, knew that, and that shows you how in that moment when they're doing business, right? It's his emotions that they're concerned about. And I'm sure they both think, and also he knows shit. He works at the bank.
Going back to Ellen real quick, I wanted to read this quote from Ellen, and I'll probably edit this back into the Ellen section. But she arrives at the Vernonry, and this is what Margaret Oliphant says about Ellen. So nobody's talking. It's just Margaret Oliphant writing. Ellen detached herself openly from Aunt Catherine's court and had set up a sort of Princess of Wales drawing room of her own. It was some time before they appeared at the Vernonry, Harry driving his sister in a phaeton with a pair of high-stepping horses, which seemed scarcely to touch the ground. Like she's coming in like a princess, right? The whole population of the place was stirred by the appearance of this brilliant equipage. Mrs. Reginald Vernon's little boy, though bound under solemn penalties never to enter the gardens, came around and hung upon the gate to gaze. Even old Captain Morgan rose from his window to take another look. Mr. Mildmay Vernon came out with his newspaper in his hand, and if the sisters did not appear, it was not from want of curiosity, but because Ellen Vernon had not received their civilities when she came to Redborough with the cordiality they had a right to expect.
It says she set up court outside of Catherine's realm or whatever the sentence was. And then she shows up in this fancy ass carriage, right?
Yeah.
And she's also dressed to the nines, and they describe her as sparkling and just effervescent and just, beautiful.
And the horses themselves are almost
are
walking on air.
Right. And so at that point, I was like, there's something about Ellen and Harry. I thought that they had more money because of that.
It is pretenses. I mean, we know this. We know she spent too much on those parties. We know,
And who's living in the White House right now? Are they?
Harry. It's Harry.
They are. They're living in the White House, which was the house that was built for Mrs. John.
And then Ellen leaves the White House when she marries Algernon.
Right.
And that's why Harry is kind of alone in this gargantuan house. And he's like,
I should get married.
I should get married. Right? Yeah. And again, to your point where all the men kind of like diminish the role of women, it's mentioned somewhere that he wants to get married because he doesn't want to manage the affairs of the house.
I think he says use.
Yes,
I could use someone clever to manage my house. If he did marry Hester, end up probably letting her teach if she wanted to. Because it's like he would really have no argument against it except society.
Sure. Her mother would have a bigger deal with it.
100%. Harry is the kind of guy who actually would be the good husband if he married a woman who was managing the affairs. He would make the money. He'd take care of the house. He's the guy who would mow the lawn. He would do equal work to her. He would take care of the kids. He would change diapers because it's logical to change diapers. Why wouldn't he change diapers? It's right here. It needs to be changed, whatever, in modern society, that's who he would have been. So in that way, he's really the only decent proposal that she gets,
Indeed, even better than Roland, again, because Roland
100%. Yeah.
And that's why I think maybe Margaret Oliphant leaves us with not concluding her romantic story, and because that's not the end of Margaret Oliphant's Hester. Margaret Oliphant's Hester ends with an ascension of herself, kind of in the wake of Catherine Vernon. Basically the phoenix from the ashes, right? She kind of
Right.
those. And what we think is she's probably going to have a role in the bank. She's probably going to move forward and be a very big part of the society, and she may not get married. She might.
I agree. I mean, she says, like, in the third to last page, I'll never get married. Like, Catherine's like, you should get married. And she's like, I'll never do it. Like,
Yeah.
like, even on Catherine's dying breath, she's like, they're good prospects. And Hester's just like, I can't.
Yeah.
She says several times throughout the book, like, poor thing. I mean, she would have married Edward, though.
Despite his faults, she knew he had faults.
Yeah.
She knew he was susceptible
Yeah.
to this speculation.
Yeah.
And she's like, listen, stay. And yes, this will be horrible.
Yeah.
But I'm going to help you get through it. And she wasn't shying away from it.
No.
She knew it was going to be hard, and she was willing to do it. It was him that was a little weenie about it.
He threatened about having a woman have any means of control over him, you know? And the thing that's so interesting to me is that Edward was so uncomfortable in this arrangement that he had with Catherine, right? But he has more freedom than he's asking Hester to have. When she marries him, at least he knows what's going on in the business and can come and go as he pleases. But he's offering Hester a deal that he himself hates. He ruins the bank. He hates the deal so much.
Let's slip in a few extra characters here. Let's talk about the other people in the Vernonry. We got the Ridgways, we got Mildmay, and we got the widow with the boys. The widow with the boys, obviously, is just a joke, right? Like, we never really meet her. We know these kids are running around like mad. We never really get to know them, but
It's
I love
really
the
just
fact.
to add some chaos to the.
I love it. I love that there are these 4 boys.
And also, I think to demonstrate all of the different types of relatives that have fallen on hard times that she's picked up.
Then there's Mildmay, which again, I feel like he's a quick discussion.
I love him.
I imagine he's kind of like those aging queens that are just like, no, look at that. No, I just imagine him as that kind of character, and I just loved it. I loved him every time he just said something. It was that's so inappropriate.
Did you notice they ride home, I want to say, from Catherine's Christmas party? And he rides outside of the carriage, like but even despite his, whatever it is, he had rheumatism or what does he have? And he coughs as the ladies are getting out of the carriage. He like coughs.
I never noticed that. That's so funny.
He thinks one of the younger women should have volunteered to sit outside because he is ill.
Well, and then at the end, when he makes this kind of like gesture of going off and moving somewhere else, it like the way that Margaret Oliphant describes it, it's not that he's making it magnanimously. He's just reading the tea leaves. And he's like,
exactly. He's like, I'll get the hell out of here. Yeah, like my payday is over in the.
It's like, ooh, yeah, this is not going to work for me anymore. And he had some kind of income, right? I mean, he lied about the ingestion of money, but he probably had something tucked away. And then you have the Ridgways, which, oh my God, I love them. And I don't have a quote for it, but I wish that whole scene in which they are talking to Catherine and they're going to lower the bomb that Edward wants to marry Hester, and they're really building it up. And yes, it does hurt Catherine, but she doesn't let them know that at all. And she turns it around on them and destroys them. And I love it.
They're like, come up to our place. We can't talk out here. And Catherine's like, tell me what you're going to say, and she just makes them talk. I think that's another reason that Catherine died, just the exhaustion, hiding your feelings all the time, day in and day out, and not letting anybody see any weakness in you.
And I think that's kind of why she wants Hester to marry, because she's like, God, if you get married, there's a part of this you can let go. There's a part of this where society will just leave you the fuck alone.
Yes. And I agree with that, and I think that like a lot of and you won't be responsible. Catherine's also she's been responsible for everybody for 30 for all these people's livelihoods and this bank and the respect of her family name. She has been responsible for 30 years, and the weight of that is just enormous. Also getting married, it's just like back then you just gave up responsibility for that stuff. And, with modern marriage, it always baffled me. I'd be in relationships where the guy is like, well, I'll just be a house husband and you work. And I'm like, dude, if shit goes down, I don't want to be responsible. I don't want to then be like, well, now I got to figure out where you and I are going to live. And I'm the only one who can possibly solve this problem, and vice versa. Like, I could never understand why somebody would want that. It puts the one breadwinner, regardless of your gender, in a terrible position to not be able to depend on anybody else if they want to leave their job for any, it's like you become trapped.
Both Claire and I work, and we still are kind of barely hanging on, right? Just the cost of everything is so expensive. So the Ridgeways, I think that pretty much, the Ridgeways are pretty much consistent throughout. And then that moment with Catherine is just such a beautiful coda to them as characters. We talked a little bit about Captain Morgan and Mrs. Morgan. Again, I think we got the main points there. I do love that he is this kind of like a avuncular figure to Hester, and they claim her, which is really kind of sweet and nice. It's like, oh yeah, Hester's one of ours.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's why they're extremely sensitive to Roland rolling in there. But she never was in danger of being, she was kind of smitten with him at the very beginning. But by the time he comes back the second time, she's over him.
Well, he proves himself to be honorable, and a good guy. But Emma...
Before we cover Emma real quick, I want to just say one real quick thing about Mr. Rule. I think I said at the beginning, he's the only representation of anybody in a nuclear family that gets through this without any like seismic shifts in their life. When he decides to go to Catherine, I have this crazy idea, and Catherine goes, let's do it, And he's just so relieved. And for 30 years then, I'm Catherine's. I will do anything she says. I will follow her to the ends of the earth.
And I thought that there was a crucial scene. They're at the Christmas party, and he goes and sits down and starts to talk to Hester and tells her the story of her mother and the 20 pounds. And isn't that sweet? Yeah. And Hester's just like, oh, God, I guess if you think that's sweet,
Exactly. And then she drills in. So what about my dad?
And he won't tell her, which I think is key. That the secrets that happen and how the misunderstandings happen because of the secrets, because everybody is afraid to tell the truth or don't tell them. It's terrible to talk about. And all of the problems that come from Hester not knowing and Mrs. John just being like, well, I don't even really know what happened. Does Mrs. John really not have any idea what happened?
I can believe that she went to go join John somewhere else and they never talked about it.
But there was something that Mrs. John said toward the end of the book that made me go, she's smart though,
And also that she might be withholding something. Yeah, I did get an impression of that.
And that she's very intelligent. And Emma just wants something to do.
Yeah.
Because if she goes and works, because she doesn't have a community around her, she doesn't have friends. If she had friends that she would be willing to work or live continuously with Roland. But because she doesn't have any kind of community, she's like, I got to get married because I don't have anything else to do. But the only way for a woman to get power, if you weren't already from wealth, is to marry somebody and become a powerful figure within your own family unit.
And she's clinical about it. The thing is, she talks about it in such stark terms. And also, you kind of get the impression that she's annoys the out of everybody, right?
Oh,
I
she
feel
annoys
like
me, you
yeah,
know?
she knows, and because and again, that's where I kind of got that. I mean, she must be a little on the spectrum because she
Yeah.
just basically says things. Kind of, she doesn't read the room. She doesn't understand the reaction other people have to the things she says. She just is like, well, this is the way it is, and it needs to be this way, and I need to do this
She's
and
a
this and this,
straight
and you need.
shooter, yes. And she's spectrum-y, yes. And I noticed that Catherine was like, I like her because she just says all the truth. She says
Yeah,
the whole time, you know?
exactly. And she's
And
at first kind of annoyed by her, but then yeah, you're right. She became
yeah.
a frequent visitor to Catherine.
Yeah, she's like, look, I like this chick. She's just standing around here telling it like it is. You know, everybody thinks what she's saying. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
Mrs. John says what a good match that Harry would be, you know,
yeah,
that's exactly what Emma's saying out loud. It's just Emma says it a lot more and to anyone. We're pretending we're in love, Emma, don't you
yeah.
know?
When she gets Catherine to take her to the party, and then she
Oh,
gets into the party, and then she's like, "Great, Catherine, I don't need you anymore. Thank you."
yeah. And Catherine's like,
Catherine's
okay.
like,
And
I'm
then
staying around. And
no, she hangs out for a little bit though, right? Like
yeah,
doesn't she
she
have her
hangs out. She
she like kicks
stays.
everybody out? I know. I love that moment. I love this entire book.
The way I got into this book, which is kind of how I got into Victorian books and detective fiction, actually, was that they were on, my mother-in-law's shelf. After she passed
Ah.
away, then I would kind of look at her shelves and kind of see what was interesting, and she had Hester on it. So you're reading her version of the book. So
Oh my God. No wonder
yeah.
it's filled with genius woman vibes. I love it. I'm done. Tell Claire, like this is, her mother is so brilliant. That's awesome. That makes me feel great. And I think that it's just such a feminist story. Why do you think it wasn't more popular? Like, was it popular?
Hester itself, the book, was less popular in its time and more popular later, but Margaret Oliphant was a popular writer. They knew. So Hester definitely got attention, right?
Yes.
And Miss Marjorie Banks is the one that is, and honestly, if you liked Hester, I think you'll really love Miss Marjorie Banks. It's not as overtly feminist
I'd love to read a
as,
romance because she writes great. Like she's writing great romance in here
oh
too.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but she drops it every 5 seconds. Like, you know what I
Well,
mean?
that's
Just
what's
be
so
like,
great about it. Like
I
she
know,
builds
I
something
know,
up and then she just, yeah,
I
lets it
know,
fall
I know.
away.
So you had not heard of this book either until you saw it on your brilliant
So I
mother-in-law's
saw
show.
it on the shelf, and then what I did is I went to the booktuber I listened to, and I searched in her because she had been booktubing for years, and sure enough, she had a video on Hester. So I watched that video and kind of got more into it, and then I read it, and then I recommended it to Carmen's dad, and he read it and loved it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely making the rounds in my immediate circle of people who.
You're like, so I know at least like 5 people have read it. No, but I am just surprised that I haven't come across it. I mean, I wasn't in
Well,
English.
Oliphant in general is not really. I think here's another thing. She was so prolific that a lot of critics sort of criticized her for sort of like not making like a classic.
This
That
book is
I
freaking
agree.
from beginning to end.
It's
This
perfect. Yeah.
woman boils society and feminism down to all of its elements that are still absolutely relevant today. And it was 1883 she wrote this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
what, in her 50s?
She was 69 when she passed away. So she was. Oh wow. Yeah, she was much younger than I thought. See,
When she wrote this?
yeah, 1830, 50, 52
She was 52 years old when she wrote this.
when she wrote it. Yeah.
Okay, yes, but still, like she's not a young woman. You know, she's a
No,
middle-aged with like she's
the
and at
middle-aged
this
woman. Yeah.
point she's been how long has her husband been dead?
She was 31 when he died.
Right. So at the point she wrote this book, she's been supporting her family and dealing with banks probably and everything for 21 years. So it's like she's the perfect person to write this because she's done the marriage thing and everything, but she never gets remarried. And I assume that the way that she sees is like, I'm going to die unmarried because you can't have both. You
Right.
can't have career and husband. It's something that I've heard, like, why would you want to get married? You own your own home. Literally, Lewis.
Who said that to you?
A variety of folks.
Oh
Like
my God.
people, 3 men, 3 different.
Oh, they're all men.
Yeah.
Because I can
And I
imagine
was
there's
like,
some.
why does everybody think? And then I was just like, fuck, if 3 of them have said it to me, then
Right.
like how many of them are just or not even realizing that they're thinking it? You know what I mean? Like,
No.
oh, well, she's got a career. That means she doesn't want, a husband type of thing. It's
Right.
something that I think about. And so Catherine dies that way. And then I think it's also Margaret Oliphant's feeling like, is it going to change? Will there be progress? Hester has said throughout the entire book, she does not want, she can't get married and she won't get married.
Yeah.
With Edward, she considers it, but she never gets a proposal she can actually truly consider.
I mean, she more than considers it. I mean, she is willing to run off with him. She just doesn't want to run off with him under those circumstances.
But those are the circumstances she's been presented with. So she's really not willing to run off with him.
And also, I don't know if she would ever actually leave her mother, and that's a thing. And Edward kind of took it as an assumption,
That he wouldn't say like, well, we'll send for her after a couple
right? That he
months,
wouldn't think about it.
or something like that, even just to bullshit her to get her out of there. But I think that if their union had been legitimate and Edward wanted to run away,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be running away at that point. They would have, the mother would have been like, go get married. Thank God my strange girl got married. Good Lord. I thought she was going to be a teacher. I don't think Mrs. John, who at that point would be, in her early 50s, would be like, I need you to stay here with me, because she's supported.
I think she would have let go, obviously, but I feel it would be Hester. It would be Hester who would.
Oh no, but Hester would never leave her mother. No, because she would feel like
and I think that's as strong as Hester is. I think that she does.
She knows her mother's in deer in headlights. She can't be left alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's the child, right?
Poor Mrs. John. No, at the end when Hester has all this information about where Edward's gone and Mrs. John knows that Hester is the one who met with him and has all of this information, is just like, don't even tell me, dear. I don't even need to know. Go to Catherine's. Like, she's like, I won't even remember it anyway. Her commitment to ignorance is thorough and consistent through the entire book. And I love it. I loved it. And I love her by the end.
As much as I pity Emma at the end for ending up with Edward, her justification in the carriage about why it would be a good idea is just hilarious. Where Edward makes the proposal.
Yeah, but
she just goes, oh, good. And I didn't realize you were looking at me, but it must have been that one time when you asked me to dance a bit.
Yes. Are you saying that you had eyes for me the entire time, but just were too afraid to speak, and that you realized upon our last meeting at the dance that you had a secret love for me that was latent that you never, actors would have a field.
Oh, yeah.
Characters.
So this has been a great discussion. I'm like,
thank you so much. I felt very disjointed at the beginning, but I feel like I got it together.
You did not sound disjointed at the beginning.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Another thing that she says that I'm like, this is what I meant when I said that she touches on every societal belief in the whole thing, or she just comments on so many things.
Yeah.
And one is that wealthy women are the women who do things first. Wealthy women are the ones who become bank managers first. Wealthy women are the ones who become what they want first because they have the means to do so.
I forgot about that. I forgot about the overt discussion of wealth that happens at the beginning of the book, and it revisits thematically throughout the book, but not so overtly as the beginning of it.
Yeah.
There's this kind of essaying on the concept of wealth
and people's place within the structure of class. Wealth, as I mentioned before, as a love exchange, right? Like Catherine is not saying that she loves them, but in that day and age, supporting someone was showing love. I mean, you must know I love you. I mean, I'm paying all this money for you to be
Right.
type of
Yeah,
thing.
totally.
And they're like, oh, she looks down on us. And I think that what Catherine does, which I think is noble throughout the story, and I think that it's what mature people do, is even though I'm angry at them, it's still the right thing for me to do to
Right.
support them with the fortune that has been amassed, that I am the steward of, but has been amassed by our family. And yes, I
Right.
did say that, but I wouldn't have even had it to save had my
Right.
family that they are all part of, right? So it's the
Yeah,
right thing
yeah.
for her to do to share this fortune with them.
And as many petty thoughts as she has, like,
Yes. She never
she
lets her
she never
petty
acts.
thoughts. Yes. And I think that that's actually maybe said in the book about her. Like she was always the master of her petty thoughts, except I think there's one time when she fucks up, and she's,
She's human, right?
yeah.
Not that I'm ever going to do this, but it would be an interesting experiment to write the story of 30 years after this, and Edward comes back to England, and it's him and Esther talking after 30 years away. Like, what would they say to each other, right? And of course, I'm imagining, probably would have got over his fever. I'm speculating here. Let's say he got over his money fever. He's with Emma. He finds a way to love Emma, and they have a long, fruitful marriage, and he has kids, and they're in Canada somewhere. She dies. He sends his kids back to England to study. And of course, he has some money. He's not totally wealthy, but he has some money, and he can live there. And of course, he still knows people there and everything. And yeah, he encounters Hester. And like, what would that conversation be like, right? I can't imagine Hester holding anger.
But I think that Hester would hold him accountable. I mean, she's so honorable. And I honestly think Edward, you're like, and then he would have this nice marriage to Emma. I'm just like, there's no way.
There's no way. There's no way. Yeah, he's too selfish.
Lily-livered, self-aggrandizing.
I think if anything, what would probably happen is that they would have a bit of marriage. Maybe she gives he gives her a child, and then he bails.
Yeah, she would come back with a kid.
He goes back with his kid, and Roland has to take care of her.
Right, and then Hester rears them. But I mean, I think secretly, I think in my mind, I'm probably, even though I don't believe it, going to comfort myself with the idea that Hester marries Harry, realizing he's not that dumb. Like, how dumb can he be? He's interested in her, but the only person she ever has a good conversation with is Edward, where they're like stimulated by the subjects each other are talking about.
Yeah. And again, that's why, like, we don't really see a lot of the good side of Edward, other than the botany thing and the fact that he's welcoming to her when everybody else is, like putting up their bristles. That's the only moment we get of his good side, and then he just goes bad so quick, And,
I know.
And again, he had big snarling at Catherine. Even that point, I didn't feel like he was a bad person.
The moment I gave up on him was that time when he belittled Harry, to go to do his football.
Yeah, well, that's later in the book. I think
later. It's way later.
I think the way that he behaves
toward Catherine
at Catherine's parties toward Hester, where he completely ignores her.
That was such a huge red flag, and that's why I have no hope for the 30 years later. Everybody had to have.
Yeah. You're right. Where he's bad from the beginning. He's
like,
wrong.
if you are such a wimp, what, she's going to disinherit him? There's all this evidence around him that shows her supporting these people who are nobodies, who have done nothing, she has not been close with all of these years. But he's just going to go ahead and assume that she is going to
completely cut him off.
But I will say, to be fair, she was very judgmental toward him, and Margaret Oliphant made it a point for her to repeatedly say to herself, not to him, if he makes the right choice about marriage.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, I would support anybody he's with as long as he makes a good choice.
If he makes a good choice. And the bottom line is we know that ultimately she would have given in to Hester, right? But Edward doesn't know that. But I feel like he should know that because Catherine didn't have to bail out the bank from the start. And the reason that he assumes it, I have to assume, is because that's how he would be if he had the money.
See, and that's the thing. I think the reason why he behaves the way he does is because he assumes Catherine would do what he would do.
Well, and he thinks he's smarter than everybody, and he thinks he knows more than everybody, and he thinks that he's being shackled and controlled. You know what I mean? It's like, if anyone's shackled and controlled by the family money, it's Catherine. She has the least freedom of everybody. The second John Vernon left her jilted, I wish there was more about that.
Oh, dude. And also, you never know whether she would have married him. I mean,
I know.
Everybody, society thought they should be together.
I know.
And they assume that she was jilted, right? They comment on that all the time, but there's nothing about Catherine, like, pining or even wishing to be with.
That's the thing. She's not going to show anybody anything, right? Like she's got all these internal feelings, but she doesn't show them to anybody. I assume because of this unreasonable anger that she had toward Mrs. John and Hester, when she knows Mrs. John is as dumb as a box of rocks, that like she's got this anger toward them. I thought that there was more shenanigans in there. Like I was like, maybe Mrs. John was like, I didn't know he was engaged when I walked by his house in my bikini. You know what I'm saying? Not that. So I just assumed that there was more there because she was so reasonable in every other area of her life except that. But I also think it's like with him doing that and forcing her into using her genius in order to save the bank, then she was really nailing her coffin shut to any kind of marital prospects that she could ever have for the rest of her life. And it catapulted her into a position where she now was responsible for everybody. And he just bailed. And the wife bailed and the kid bailed and just gallivanted all over everywhere.
The kid didn't even exist until 16 years later.
That timeline is fucked up.
I know it's fucked up. It would have just been so much cleaner if it was just 14 years. I kind of feel like 14 years is a long time as well.
She needed Esther to be 19 and she needed Catherine to be old enough that she could die of a broken heart.
Yes. Yeah. She didn't want her to die of a broken heart 50.
You can't, it's not to say. Like at 65, you can see it. Like she just.
Well, it also, actually, it's probably closer to 70 because she was 65 when, and then they describe another few years.
In the book. You're right. So she's closer to 70. Thank you so much. This was super fun. I'm so happy to have read this book. I loved it so much. You have no idea. I cried at the end.
Thank you so much, everyone. I had a great time. I know Anna had a great time. I hope you had a great time as well. And please join us again if you just like hearing long-form discussions about books. And if you have any ideas for books I should read with my friends, or if you want to read a book with me and talk about it, then reach out. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.